Welcome into the WalterPicks Fantasy Football Show. My name is Avery. I'm here with Seth. We are talking all of the top starts and sits coming into week 7, everything you need to know. Make sure to hit that like button. It helps us as creators, and it can help you start a guy like Jordan Whittington. One of the top waiver wire ads. If you've seen the waiver wire video from us this week, Jordan Whittington coming off a pretty mid game, if we're being completely serious. He only had 3 receptions on his 4 targets, but the main storyline to worry about here is Mr. Puka Nakua. Pookie himself is dealing with an injury. As far as the time we're recording this video, it does not look like he is going to be good to go in this matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, which we know is one of the more positive matchups in allowing fantasy points to wide receivers. And if we pull up his numbers from last year, when he had games over a 50-60% snap share when he was the starting wide receiver, he definitely put together a few numbers. So the game script is going to change a little bit without Puka if he's not there. Obviously, if Puka does play, we're not starting Jordan Whittington. But again, I really doubt that he is. He can be a guy you can throw into your flex with the passing volume that Matthew Stafford has, and also the matchup with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Seth, are you trusting this flex play this week?
Man, Jordan Whittington is a tough start for me. He's got 5.3 points, but I see exactly what you're talking about. When you go look at what Devonta Adams did last week as well, when Puka was out, Devonta Adams wasn't able to carry that load like Puka Nakua, like Cooper Kupp has done in the past. So someone like Jordan Whittington definitely needs to step up. And like you said, the matchup is solid. I'll head over to the matchup tab in the WalterPicks app, which is just overpowered at this point since we have 7 weeks of data. We can see week 1, McMillan, first ever game, 12 points. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Nico Collins. They did pretty well against the 49ers, I will say that. Tyquan Thornton, Marquise Brown, Xavier Worthy all had some decent points, around 10. And it may not look great, but hey, I'd take 10 points from Jordan Whittington this week. Then last week, we saw Jackson Smith-Njigba and Cooper Kupp have some decent weeks. So far, the Jaguars have been weaker against the wide receivers. So I think this could be a good spot start if you're in some trouble.
Yeah, and speaking of Jaguars, our first sit of the video, guys, and make sure to comment your start sits, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Our man here in Travis Hunter, he actually did see his highest snap percentage on offense last week of his entire career against the Seattle Seahawks at 78% of the snaps. That led to his 7 targets, which was the second highest of his season so far, but only 4 receptions. Not that good of a game at all. Now coming into this matchup against the Los Angeles Rams, again, if we're not going to have Puka, it's Devontae Adams and everybody else. It's a game where I could see Travis Hunter playing a little bit more on defense than usual until we see him string together a couple games of 70-80% snap share on the offense, which I don't think is going to be too common and happening a lot. It's a little bit too risky for Travis Hunter. I mean, you look at his receptions, 6, 3, 1, 3, 3, 4, like nothing special. Unless he sees a higher target share, it's not something I'm loving. And the Rams defense is actually pretty good at stopping wide receivers. And it just seems to me like a Brian Thomas Jr. game, one where I'm not necessarily confident putting Travis Hunter in our starting lineup. Seth, is there a path to fantasy points you see for him here?
The one thing I'm watching out for is the matchups are finally not completely red as they have been this entire season. You see, they've probably played the toughest. I mean, I just have to assume based on 5 really difficult matchups, they have 5 top 12 matchups they've faced so far with 1 easy matchup. It's been pretty difficult for the wide receiver, and the Rams are, according to this, let's go to the matchup tab and see exactly who's doing well against them for the wide receivers. Because like you said, the Rams defense has been pretty solid. But we do have Alec Eomanor, had a good week, but they held Ridley down. They gave up Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. That's one of the toughest matchups. They gave Kendrick Bourne, dropped 24. So one player did, but that's Brian Thomas Jr. in this game. And then week 6, nobody did anything. So the Rams, like you said, have been pretty good. They've had a few spike weeks from downfield wide receivers. Travis Hunter, he's more of a wide receiver 2, which hasn't really stood out much in any game, essentially, except maybe with the Titans. But I would say I'd keep him on the bench this week for sure. But I will say, one note that I want to say is maybe trade for him. Because the price, people are dropping him. I think I've dropped him in one league where I just had to add smaller league where I needed somebody I could play because the schedule does get a lot easier. And hey, maybe he starts doing a little bit better against some easier teams, and you could pay pretty much nothing to get him right now. But for now, I'm leaving him on the bench till he has that first breakout game.
Yeah, that is definitely a good call out for him. And a guy we do need to be looking at as a potential start is Ramondre Stevenson. And we'll even add Trevion Henderson into the mix here too because of the matchup that they do get. Now, could possibly be on waivers in some leagues, but this matchup against the Tennessee Titans cannot be ignored. They are one of the most positive defenses in allowing fantasy points to running backs. If it wasn't for that, we would not be going through and starting Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, you look at his game logs over the past few weeks, he did play his highest snap share at 72%, but 1.8 fantasy points against the Saints last week, and what was supposed to be a positive matchup in a game where they were winning. 13 carries, his highest carry number of the season, but only 18 yards, 1.3 yards per carry. Like Ramondre Stevenson, number one, has not really been efficient this year and also been fumbling, but there's nobody else in this backfield. I mean, Trevion Henderson is projected 11.5 fantasy points on ESPN. I think he is probably going to be the safer start here, Seth. I mean, I don't know what you think about Ramondre Stevenson, but he's likely going to get more of the carries, and this matchup is just so positive. You're probably hoping that he falls into the end zone to be fantasy relevant because they are splitting the receiving work as well. But it's just such an unfortunate backfield to have to go against the best matchup of the week. So, Seth, what are you doing with these two running backs?
Yeah, it looks like based on the matchup tab, somebody's going to do good. I mean, we had J.K. Dobbins, week 2, Kyron Williams and Blake Corum didn't have the best game. I feel like we had some nice games from the rest of the Rams team. Jonathan Taylor, obviously he's great. Woody Marks had an amazing week. Michael Carter was amazing. Ashton Genty was solid last week. But even Ashton Genty last week, he had 75 rush yards, but his yards per carry weren't very strong. So that's something to watch out for in this game. And I think that Ramondre, with the positive matchup, like you said, he's got to score. That the Tennessee defense, the reason why they're so positive is this offense is terrible. Because, I mean, I like a lot of the players. You know, I love Cam Ward, but they go 3 and out. They have so many holding penalties. They have so many issues. They did change their coach this week as well. They fired their coach. They're going to replace him. Maybe that'll be a little bit of a spark for him. But I think Ramondre, you could play. I would probably leave Henderson on the bench personally, just because of that snap share that you pointed out at the beginning. That's why I like to use the WalterPicks app, and that's one of the things that I kind of latch onto here. 72%. This is going to be where they trust Ramondre. Maybe he fumbles and gives Henderson a chance, but I'd probably play Ramondre. Henderson, if you're hurting, I think worth a shot this week with a positive matchup, because next week and the week after against Cleveland and Atlanta, I think both these guys are going to be on your bench. So my advice, again, keep an eye out for you. If they have a good week, that would be the time to trade, because it is going to get difficult before it gets easier. Playoff schedule is amazing for these guys, one of the best for running backs, but I don't know if this is the team to have the best running back schedule for the playoffs because they haven't been trustworthy.
Yeah, that is great insight and some additions there, guys. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel because we are the only channel on YouTube that has a Seth on our side to give us information like this. And while he is looking up Bam Knight in the WalterPicks app, guys, if you want to research stats like this for yourself, you 100% can do it. You can use the Start Sit tool and Trade Analyzer that we've built for you inside the WalterPicks app. You can use code Avery in the app when you download to support me, and code NOBS to support Seth, the guy that is giving all of the important notes for this stream as well. And we will go through and look at Bam Knight, guys, a player that I will say I picked up for 61 fab in a 32-person league with all of the WalterPicks guys. I feel kind of smart, feel kind of big-brained about doing that. I'm starting him because I have no choice. Are we starting him in a 12 team, getting a matchup against the Green Bay Packers? That's a little bit more of the question, because he's going to be one of the top added players of the week. I mean, he didn't score that crazy of fantasy points, 12.4 against the Indianapolis Colts last week, but he played 51% of the snaps. He saw 11 carries. That was the most on the team, 34 yards, and he scored the touchdown. He got the goal line opportunities. The issue here is we have absolutely no idea what to expect from this backfield every single week. You look at Michael Carter, his snaps dropped from 60% to 40% last week. He saw 9 carries to his 18 that he saw last week. And we have Amari DeMarcado, who went out with an injury. He's questionable to come back in this week as well. We don't know too much about him now, meaning that this backfield is just a complete committee. Like, if we have Kyler Murray in this matchup as well, it doesn't necessarily help because he does take the rushing upside here. And it's a tougher matchup against the Green Bay Packers, who, granted, their defense has not been great as far as fantasy points, but they've been decent against stopping the run. And this does not look like a spot where we can really start any of these running backs. And then they come into a bye in week 8, and then they get some decent matchups after that. But if you're picking up Bam Knight, I don't know if we're necessarily starting him. I don't think there is a strong start in this matchup you can trust. Seth, do you have any type of love for any of these guys here?
Yeah, I mean, Bam Knight would be the guy, in my opinion. Michael Carter had a pretty decent game. He had great volume, had a touchdown in week 5, and then week 6, he goes to the second back, and Bam Knight really starts to take over. And that was what the coaches said, or that's what the analysts said. That's kind of what the vibe was throughout the week, that Bam Knight was going to take over. And I think there's potential for him to continue to take over even a little bit more. But against Green Bay, he would absolutely need the touchdown. He scored a touchdown the last 2 weeks, and he has 9 points. So without the touchdown, that's 3 points. And 12 points last week. So without the touchdown, that's 6 points. And it's just not a guarantee that someone scores a touchdown every single week. It just doesn't happen. If it does happen, it would be Bam Knight in the WalterPicks app. We do have the red zone carries. We can see he's had 3 rush attempts in the red zone and 2 goal line carries. Again, that's why you need the WalterPicks app. That gives you the advantage you need to say, if someone scores a touchdown in this game, probably going to be Bam Knight. So if you're desperate to add him off the waiver wire, I think go for it. I think play him. Like, if you have to start him off the waiver wire, like Avery said, he's in 32. He's starting him. I think if you're adding him off the waiver wire, you're probably starting him. But if you do have other options, if you added him early, like Big Brain, like Avery did as well, I think I would sit him this week, considering any other decent option.
And we look at another kind of situation here that has a lot of people figuring out what to do. It is the 49ers wide receivers. I mean, we could just pull up Kendrick Bourne, I guess, in the WalterPicks app because he's really been the main focal point of this offense. Now, last week we did have Juwan Jennings back. He played 77% of the snaps, and now is questionable again after putting up 1.7 fantasy points on 1 catch for his 3 targets. I mean, like who is healthy right now? Because Ricky Pearsall is still questionable coming into this week. We have Juwan Jennings questionable again. So it's really up to Kendrick Bourne. And if both of these wide receivers are out again, I think Kendrick Bourne is a fine start here. I mean, it is a tougher defense against the Atlanta Falcons, but if he's getting 10 or 11 targets and then 9 targets in his last 2 games, playing over 70-80% of the snaps as a starting wide receiver, I mean, maybe we just go through and trust this guy again until the wheels fall off. We just ride this hot hand. Seth, are you trusting it? Because it is a bit of a risky situation, and I know a lot of people have questions about this.
Well, I will say that based on the stats, any week he starts, he's locked in for 142 receiving yards. I don't care about the receptions, the targets. He's getting 142. But he's been a top 12 wide receiver the last 2 weeks. I think if he wasn't Kendrick Bourne, he did play both those weeks with Mac Jones. I do want to call that out as well. That's not Brock Purdy, who may play this week. I'm not sure at this moment. But if it's Mac Jones or Brock Purdy, I agree with you. I think if a player's going to be top 12 2 weeks in a row, with Juwan Jennings coming back. Now, George Kittle could come back this week as well, but there's so much could and maybe. Kendrick Bourne's healthy. Kendrick Bourne's been great. When somebody's been healthy, when somebody's been great, I think he's earned his spot in this lineup, at least with all these injuries. He's going to get some run in this game. So I think, hey, if you got him off the waiver wire, I'd give it a shot this week, especially if Pearsall's back or Juwan Jennings, because Atlanta was shutting down some of the Bills' wide receivers yesterday with their top corners. And if he's getting the second or third matchup, they may just have to go to Kendrick Bourne. So I agree with you, Avery. I would start him in this matchup until he has his first bad week, and then maybe reconsider.
100%. And thinking of reconsidering, we should do that for Sam Darnold. This might hit a lot of heartstrings for people because, I mean, he's done pretty decent in fantasy football. Against the Jacksonville Jaguars this week, he had 20 fantasy points, then 28 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 16 against the Cardinals. Like, he's been altogether pretty good. Outside of his first game against the 49ers, he's had over 15 fantasy points in every single one of those in a couple 20-point games. But now he comes into this matchup against the Houston Texans. Now, as long as you have JSN on your team, you should be okay. But I mean, he's been the QB9 and the QB2 the last 2 weeks. I don't think it's sustainable against this Houston Texans defense, which does pressure the quarterback at a pretty good rate. I think it's going to be one where he's struggling a little bit, especially considering the lack of rushing upside that he really does bring. Seth, what is your opinion on Sam Darnold and some of the quarterback starts and sits for the week?
Yeah, I think Sam Darnold is a sit this week. I mean, I will say that the matchup looks more difficult than it is. Matt Stafford, I mean, he's a good quarterback, but, Kyron Williams, he can rush in the touchdowns. Baker Mayfield, they held him to under 20 points. That's impressive. Trevor Lawrence hasn't been great. Cam Ward has not been great. Cooper Rush has not been great. So the Texans have faced probably the easiest possible quarterbacks to face. They got the backups. They've got some teams that have a good running quarterbacks as well. So I'm going to say the matchup isn't as scary. Still scary. I agree 100%, Avery. This is not a good matchup, but I do want to put the context around it there. I'm still benching him, though. I just don't think he's that strong of a quarterback. Honestly, I think he's had some great game against Tampa Bay, but they had some injuries. Jacksonville, that's a good game as well. He's been solid, but I do think that Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet will start to get their feet under them, and this would be a week to do it against Houston. You don't want to let Houston have the ball, be able to just go shot for shot with you because they've been really good as well. Nico Collins, JSN, who wouldn't love to see a good wide receiver battle? But I would bench him this week for sure. I think there's other good options. Jackson Dart off the waiver wire, especially someone that, when he doesn't have 5 turnovers like he did against the Saints, he was a great fantasy option last week. So there's probably some better options. And Sam Darnold, I think he's a good trade away target. I know I've been kind of hammering that with some of these starts and sits, but look at the schedule. It's brutal. It's brutal. He's played by far the easiest segment of his schedule. He's coming off 2 good weeks. So I would search for someone in your league that has someone on bye. That could be an interesting week 7. I believe that's Ravens and Bills. So that's one thing to watch out for, or someone who's been struggling with their quarterback and try to give them Sam Darnold for some value because his value, I think, is about to drop off a cliff with this upcoming schedule.
Yeah, and speaking of some pickup quarterbacks, Joe Flacco has been one of the top added quarterbacks, and I will cover this very, very shortly. A lot of people are throwing him into their starting lineups here against the Pittsburgh Steelers after putting 18 fantasy points up against a pretty good, or maybe not as good, maybe fraudulent defense of the Green Bay Packers, who, as far as fantasy football points have gone, have definitely disappointed. But I don't think Joe Flacco is a guy that we can just go through and trust. I mean, 18 fantasy points last week against a good defense, yes, but it definitely is one that looks to me like fool's gold this week.
Yeah, I'm going to agree, unless you have to. I think he's a fine pickup if you have to. There's some guys, like I probably would start him over Sam Darnold, just hoping to get a little bit more passing with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but I'm not going to start him over anybody that's been established so far.
Yeah, and speaking about passing, let's go ahead and look at the Bucks wide receivers. Whoever ends up being healthy, we can look up Sterling Shepard, whoever you want, Seth, because at this point, who knows? Mike Evans is reported to be hopeful to play in this week's matchup against the Detroit Lions. Like Buka's going to be out. Chris Godwin's likely going to be out again. So that leaves Sterling Shepard, a Tez Johnson, and a Cameron Johnson, who a lot of people probably thought was Tez Johnson before they knew who Cameron Johnson was because he didn't have a player profile in half of the apps, but WalterPicks, we have him here. So this is what we have to break down of who we're going to start in this matchup against the Lions, because it is a pretty decent one. Like the Lions defense allows a decent amount of fantasy points to wide receivers this year. And we break down the snap splits from last week. Tez Johnson actually had the most snaps and ran the most routes, which is surprising because Sterling Shepard has been the glue guy. All of these wide receivers split in target share. Pretty much every single one of them saw 3 or 4 targets. Emeka Egbuka, Cam Johnson, and then Sterling Shepard. He ran the second most routes, but had the least number of snaps. I think Sterling Shepard is still going to be our solid option. He's going to be the safest guy because of how much he has been on the field in the previous weeks. Tez Johnson, to me, is more of a flex if you need it. Very, very, very risky. But a guy we should be stashing, of course, because of the target share that he did see. He is a rookie. If all of these wide receivers are going to be out, maybe that's an option. But again, in this matchup, I think Sterling Shepard is a fine spot start. And I guess maybe if you're in a deep league, Tez would be the fringe, but not somebody that I'm necessarily going through and saying is a must start. Seth, how do you feel about this group of wide receivers here?
It's pretty tough this week because it could be any of them, and it could be all of them. It could be none of them. But I think the fact that a couple of them actually put up some decent fantasy points with Emeka Egbuka playing most of the game is pretty interesting. So if you're hurting, of some of the options we've talked about, like we talked about Jordan Whittington, where would you go here? Like this is where I say I personally think Jordan Whittington maybe has more safety potentially because you're expecting some targets to go his way, but the Bucks, they just score. They score so much. They pass a lot. Baker Mayfield is making everybody look like prime Randy Moss out there. I mean, it's insane. And I think going with a Bucks wide receiver actually could be a better option. And I like just go for whoever's available. If you don't have Fab, go for who's available. If you don't have waiver priority, just wait till they're done or go for your favorite. And then if you don't get them, grab another guy. Because there's probably going to be at least one who's not claimed. And I think that the upside is there in this Bucks offense.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying that target share is going to go to Cade Otton, which I'm not 100% confident in. I don't think he is a must-add off the waiver wire for that reason. I mean, he's been playing 100% of the snaps and getting pretty much every route out of the tight end position. And just now, all of a sudden, he's kind of putting it together. But I don't think it's sustainable and trustworthy enough. I would be starting Jordan Whittington first. I mean, maybe we'll split the difference here, Seth, and see when we come back next week what happens. I mean, it is a 3v1. You got 3 wide receivers to choose from.
That's true.
But They're all definitely solid stars, guys. And let us know who you're starting in the comments and what questions you guys have. And we'll go ahead and jump over to the last part of this video with the defenses here. Guys, this is a very weird week for streaming defenses. Like, if you do that, you have to put your top waiver claim, put a little bit of extra fab on the Chiefs defense this week. They get a matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. Geno Smith, guys, if you were to take a guess on how many interceptions Geno's thrown so far, you should probably multiply it by 2 or 3. He's thrown 10.
Wow,
10
that is higher than I
interceptions.
thought. I thought it was 7. 10 is insane.
No. It's been bad. It's been very bad. He even threw an interception against the Titans defense. That should tell you all
It
you
was
need
a
to know.
bad throw, too. It was really bad.
And he threw 3 interceptions on 14 completions against the Bears a few weeks ago. So, like, he is a turnover machine, great for the defenses. And it's not like the Chiefs defense themselves is bad either. They have a solid internal unit. So they are my top option off the waiver wire for defenses this week. If you can't get them, you can also get a serviceable one and get the Bears. They have been forcing turnovers. They have been averaging, I think, 1.9, 1.8 interceptions per game. They are forcing the turnovers. The defense themselves can't stop the run. But I mean, if they're forcing these turnovers, I know Spencer Rattler has not really thrown the interceptions too often, but the New Orleans Saints is a matchup where maybe they can get one against them. So those are the top 2 ads off the waiver wire for defenses, guys. You can also get Eddie Pinheiro off the waiver wire as well. He's only rostered in 28% of leagues, but he's the kicker 2 right now. I don't really see how that's possible, but he's cooking, and you do not want to avoid the kickers, because sometimes kickers and defenses is really what wins you a week. Just like watching these videos and checking out WalterPicks on YouTube and all the live streams that we do, guys. That is going to finish it off for us. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you in the live streams and videos coming later this week.